Let me ask you about the Israeli police detained soldiers yesterday, or the day before yesterday, suspected of raping a Palestinian, sparking protests and so on. Apparently, rape and killing and torture and all this thing, it happens regularly in Israeli detention camps. Does that constitute a war crime to you?
So the reports of abuse are deeply concerning, and we've been clear and consistent with Israel and the IDF that they need to treat all detainees humanely and with dignity in accordance with humanitarian law. We also, I spoke a little bit about this earlier in the week, Said, we reiterate the support that that the IDF is investigating some of these allegations of serious abuse of Palestinian detainees, and that is news that we welcome, and we're going to let that process, and we believe in due process, and we're going to let that process play out.
Two quick points. Now, if proven to be true, that does constitute a war crime, doesn't it?
I'm not a legal expert, Said. It certainly, I imagine it would be inconsistent with Israeli law. And so, of course, that is why we have been clear that the treatment of any detainee needs to be consistent with international humanitarian law.
The UN is reporting that 86% of Gazans are now being evacuated or under evacuation orders. Is that in any way, is there a disaster looming in the next few days, few weeks, and so on, as far as the humanitarian situation is concerned?
Said, we've been pretty clear about the fact that the humanitarian circumstances in Gaza are incredibly dire, and that continues to be the case today. And that's exactly why we are pushing so strongly for a ceasefire deal to get across the finish line, because among the many things that it can unlock is an influx of humanitarian aid into Gaza. We also, you've heard us talk about this before, we are opposed to the forced displacement of Palestinian civilians, and it's crucial that sufficient aid reaches civilian populations in need, wherever they seek shelter, especially the recently displaced. We also believe, though, Said, that Israel has every right to defend itself and conduct certain military operations, and if part of that operation they feel the need that they need to make sure that certain areas or regions or neighborhoods are evacuated of civilians, that's certainly their prerogative to conduct that operation in that way. It is, of course, important, though, that these efforts are fully compliant with international humanitarian law, especially as it relates to protecting civilians, and certain efforts can be made, like enabling safe civilian evacuations before these operations start, providing clear evacuation information in multiple formats. So these are things we're going to continue to stress and highlight with our partners in the IDF.
Just a quick follow-up on Olivia's question regarding the talks now, the ongoing negotiations. So are there any renewed effort or maybe new ideas, or is the United States providing new incentives, whatever it is, to get these negotiations to their goal line?
I'm just not going to speak to the specifics of the process, Said. That would be unhelpful to it. I will leave it at, again, we are working tirelessly for a ceasefire deal to happen. We think it can unlock a great deal for the region, and we'll continue to work these efforts around the clock.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. Has there been any direct contact between Secretary Blinken or President Biden or any?
Good. Go ahead, Said.
Yeah, let me just, a couple of things I'm trying to understand here. You keep referring to Israel's right to defend itself, and the groups like Hezbollah and others as maligned groups, proxy groups, and so on. Don't you think you strip the people of the region of their right to fight for their occupied territories? After all, Israel occupies parts of Lebanon, occupies the Golan Heights. That is an occupied Syrian territory, occupies the West Bank, indeed occupies Gaza. You keep saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. What about the people of the region that have suffered, for what, decade now, maybe close to 60 years under occupation? Do they have a right to freedom, the right to defend a military occupation?
Let's unpack that for a second, Said. What we're talking about, let's just use Hamas for example, is we're talking about a terrorist group that has time and time again made clear that integral to their mission statement is the destruction of the state of Israel. They have said, not hyperbole, that if they are able to, they would repeat October 7th over and over and over again if they can. And so just let me be very clear about this. When we talk about the Palestinian people, when we talk about what is in the best interest of the Palestinian people, actions that we think that are reflective of the will of the Palestinian people, I do not believe, this administration does not believe, this secretary, this president does not believe that Hamas is acting in the will, in the interest of the Palestinian people. Is the question, do the Palestinian people deserve equal measures of dignity and justice? Absolutely. That is exactly why we have so fervently championed a two-state solution, one that would give equal measures of dignity and justice to the Palestinian people, one that would give the Palestinian people their own state next to an Israeli state as well. So that's what we're talking about, Saeed.
Okay.
I do not believe, and this administration does not believe, that these terrorist groups are acting in the interest of whether it be the Palestinian people or the Lebanese people in the context of Hezbollah either.
So do you believe that the Palestinians have an equal measure to live free of military occupation?
Of course we do, Saeed, and that is exactly why we have so strongly and fervently talked about the need for a two-state solution, because there is a need for equal measures of dignity and justice for Israelis and Palestinians alike. And when we have seen action, Saeed, when we have seen action that is inconsistent with that, whether that be in Gaza, whether that be in the West Bank or elsewhere, we have drawn attention to it and will continue to do so. But this administration does not believe that terrorist groups like Hamas or Hezbollah are acting in the interest of the Palestinian or the Lebanese people, respectively.
Well,
Go ahead.
okay.